There it is. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the fall GRE grad school night. This is Dr. Stillwell. My camera's off at the moment because my Wi-Fi is wonky. So hopefully I'll be able to turn it back on in a bit. But anyway, welcome, and we are recording this, and so you'll be able to see it later on once we get that situated. So I will turn it over to Dr. Fryer and then to Kim.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. So those of you who are here right now, those of you who are watching later, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about all of the things that you need to be thinking about if you are eventually thinking about graduate school. This is going to include the GRE, what this is all about, how you're going to be doing this, things like how you find graduate programs, and then importantly, how you actually get your application together, all of the components that you're going to need to make this happen, and timelines for when you really need to do these things. However, again, like Dr. Stillwell mentioned, we are honored to have Kim Jukic here with us. So let's let her, I'm just gonna stop talking. Kim, floor is yours, please.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, so I'm here to talk a little bit about the GRE, what's involved in the exam, what you're gonna see on test day, and also to give you information about a preparation course that we offer at Clarkson. This semester, that prep course will be online via Zoom for obvious reasons. So backing up to the GRE exam itself, there are three components to the exam. You're going to have your verbal reasoning, your quantitative reasoning, and then they're going to test through your writing skills, your critical thinking and analytical writing skills. So the exam starts with the essay portion. So you're going to be asked to write 2 essays. One is you're going to be asked to analyze an issue. And then the second one, you're going to be asked to analyze an argument. So you get 30 minutes for each of those essays. There are a lot of nice online tools that you can use while you're working on your essay. They have, for example, like an insert text, a cut and paste, delete text. So kind of like as if you're, using Word or something similar. You've probably had practice writing essays on a computer, so that's what it's going to be like. The big difference is you're going to be timed, and when your 30 minutes is done, then your essay will be submitted, and hopefully it's finished by then before it gets submitted. But no worries if you still had some final thoughts you didn't get in there before the time ran out. They're still going to see everything you wrote up until that point, and you'll be graded on really how well you develop your argument, how you support your ideas and things like that. And the essay is graded on a scale from 0 to 6, which differs from the rest of the exam. So once the essay is over, you're going to go right into either a verbal section or a math section. And you won't know what order the exam is going to you won't know what order you're going to have verbal and math. You might have 2 math in a row, you might have 2 verbal in a row. It'll all be mixed up. And then the best part of it all is they're going to throw in a section to test questions, which won't actually count towards your score, but you won't know which section that is. So you just want to do your best on all of them. What you will know is that if you had 3 verbal sections and only two math sections, then one of those verbal sections was a practice section. So anyway, for the verbal, they're going to test you on reading comprehension, text completion, and sentence equivalence. So for the reading comprehension, they're going to give you a reading passage, give you some time to read it, and then they'll be asking you questions about what you just read. During that section, you're going to have 20 questions and 30 minutes to answer those 20 questions. So the one thing I always tell students is to please take some practice tests at home, and make sure you use a timer when you do those practice tests at home, because you will find that the time passes very quickly when you get to exam day. it doesn't sound like a whole lot, 20 questions in 30 minutes, but the time flies by. So you definitely want to practice with a timer. The quantitative sections will test your arithmetic skills, algebra, geometry, and data analysis. There won't be any trigonometry on there, no statistics. So basically, through high school math is what you'll be tested on the GRE. And again, 20 questions for that section. You'll have 35 minutes to complete it, and you'll want to practice with a timer. The testing software has a lot of features built in. There'll be an online calculator that you can use. There's going to be mark and review features that you can use during the verbal sections. So really everything you need for taking the exam is going to be built into your exam. You don't even need to bring paper and pencils on test day. That is, if you're taking it in person, you'll be provided with all of that. So I mentioned if you're taking it in person because right now a limited number of testing centers offer the GRE in person. Our testing center still offers it in person, but we're limited to giving it to current Clarkson students only because the campuses don't allow students from other campuses to come into the buildings. That's in effect through the fall semester. So if any of you don't need to take it until spring, we should be able to accommodate you for an in-person GRE in the spring. Some students are choosing to take the GRE online, which means you can take it at home, or if you're able to find a space on campus that's quiet. I know we've had a few students here at Clarkson who are planning to take theirs online, but they don't want to take it in their dorm room because they have like 5 suite mates and they know that it's not going to be quiet when they take their exam. So they've asked, they've talked to room reservations and found some spaces on campus that they can use on a Saturday to quietly take their GRE. So I'm actually going to show you the book that we use in the prep course. I don't know if you can all see that. It's the ETS official guide for the GRE. And when you take the prep course, you'll be provided with the book and extra materials from the instructors. Our class, again, will be via Zoom. It'll be on Saturday afternoons, Sunday afternoons for 5 weeks, and it starts this weekend. So if you are interested, please send me an email by noon tomorrow so we can get you added to that roster. And if you do practice at home, I do encourage you to, this book is a good one. There's a couple other good ones out there. You can just read reviews and see which books would work best for you. You can also find a lot of online practice exams, and it's always good to practice on the computer. That's how you'll be taking the exam, whether it's in person or online. So I'm just going to open this up for questions. If you have any questions about the exam itself or the prep course, fire away. Anybody?
Actually, I have one question.
Yes.
You had mentioned that there were pros and cons to taking the exam at home versus in person before we started. And I was wondering if you could sort of talk about what do you see as the pros versus the cons of the two
Right.
options?
So because it's so new, it's hard to say with certainty, but I have been reading articles that certain universities are frowning upon the online GRE because they're questioning the security of the exam. Some of them are insisting on getting an in-person score. However, this is still new and this is just, hearsay of what's going around. But I've read recently that certain universities are saying, we're not going to consider your online GRE score. We can't be 100% certain that the testing environment was secure and so on. Other schools take either the online or the in-person GRE. When you take the online GRE, it's actually shorter because they don't throw the practice section in there. So some students find that appealing, that it's going to be a shorter exam. They're not going to be testing questions on you. Everything that you do is counting toward your score. when you take it, I've actually had a few students call me and say, I took it online, but I really didn't like the online experience. It was hard for me to focus. So I want to take it in person. So I've had a few students who've already tried taking it online and said, this wasn't for me, I want to come take it in person. Then I've heard from students who took it online, really enjoyed the experience. They were more comfortable being in their own home. They didn't have to go through the stress of driving to a testing center, looking for parking, and you know, it kind of all adds up on test day, what happens when you get to the test center. Certain situations can make students very nervous, so being able to take that exam from your, you know, from the computer in your bedroom, that's quite appealing to a lot of students. So there, like I said, there's plus and minuses to both. I think it just depends on the individual, how you feel, what's your situation. Can you find a quiet space for 3.5 hours knowing that you won't be interrupted? There will be a human proctor watching you as you take it online. So if anyone were to burst into your room during the time that you're taking the exam, that could cause some problems. If they, you know, they record everything and they'll review it, and if they find that you were talking to a person who came into the room, they have the right to cancel your score and have you take it again. So you've got to be careful of that. You've got to be certain that no one's going to walk in on you while you're taking the exam. Even a pet entering the room could be problematic, depending on, you know, how much commotion that creates, or if they see you often looking away from the exam to other areas of the room, that can be considered suspicious. So there's just a lot to think about when you're testing at home.
So Kim, just
Yes.
building off on that real quick, if you take this at home, that means security-wise, you're on camera, and that's how they're doing security for the online GRE right now.
Correct.
Thank
Yep.
you. We also had a question from Joe Shermer. Can you retake the exam? And if so, are you required to wait between taking it? Wait between times that when you take it?
Yes, you can take the exam as many times as you'd like. You have to wait 21 days between each exam. So yeah, if you took an exam tomorrow, you'd be able to take it again probably around the 1st of October. And then another thing I didn't mention is when you get to the end of your exam, they're going to ask you, would you like to cancel your scores or would you like to report them? But they ask this question before you can actually see what your score is. So I have students say, well, I just paid all this money. Why would I cancel my score? And the answer is some students go into test day not feeling well. They know that the exam didn't go well for them. They know that they could do much better, and they don't want to send those scores to schools. So they will click on the option to cancel the scores. But again, that means you can't even see what you did score. You've got to make that decision before they actually flash up the score on the screen.
And what is the cost to take the exam, do you know? And does it differ at home or in person?
That's a very good question. We don't handle any of the registrations, and they change the price all the time. So I don't know, maybe one of your students out there might know the answer to this. I want to say it was around $195 the last time I checked. I know for the GMAT, it's cheaper to take the online version as opposed to the in-person. The in-person GMAT, for example, is $240. The online GMAT is $200. So I'm guessing GRE is similar to that. But I want to say the last time I checked, in-person GRE is $195.
I put the link gre.org in the chat.
Okay.
If someone is interested in looking at that.
I'm also putting, so if you're going to eventually register for this, it's through Educational Testing Services, ets.org. I'm just trying real quick to find the current price for this, just to see if we can, so register now. Carry on, I'm just gonna talk to myself.
Okay. Any other questions?
Are students with accommodations able to receive those like double time or like testing breaks during your test?
That's all up to ETS. So if you go to the ETS GRE.org website and you click on register, you will see there will be information about test takers with accommodations. They have their own application process for those accommodations. So you will have to submit all the paperwork directly to ETS. So all this to say, if you have accommodations at your college, that doesn't necessarily transfer over to ETS. They're going to need all the paperwork from you, a letter from your doctor, some forms they have on their website that you'll have to fill out. But yes, there are accommodations available and you can be approved for those. You just have to go through the process with ETS in order to get approved for those accommodations. Good question.
Thank you.
Yep.
What were the hours for the practice course on Saturdays and Sundays?
From 2 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And is that going to be recorded so that if someone can't physically be there, they could Zoom, they could watch it later?
Yes. Yep.
I can't for the life of me find the price of the GRE online
I
easily.
know it's
There's-
not, they don't make it obvious. I
I
know
have to sign in, create an
I've
account,
looked
and
for it in the past before I've come to these, and it is difficult to find.
Just a note for all the students before I forget to say this later. If you're a member of something like C-STEP on campus, they will help pay for things like this. So the GRE is normally, if I remember, it's something in the hundreds of dollars. It's definitely a three-figure cost to take this test. There are some other organizations, if you qualify, that can help you with things like books for practicing and taking the GRE test to begin with. There's money available. Please, again, talk to us about this kind of stuff. Any other questions for Kim about the GRE?
Do we know any in-person test centers in New York for Potsdam students?
I believe the closest place would be Watertown. So in Watertown, they have what's called a prometric testing center. And I believe they're testing in person there. Syracuse has a location, and I believe Burlington. So those would be the three closest places. Another option is if you're going to be home during the break. I think, are your students going home for Thanksgiving? Is that
Yes,
kind of
and
the
then
end
they're
of
home
semester?
after that.
Yeah, so if you want to check testing centers near your hometown, you might, especially if you're from a larger city, you might have more options as far as in-person test centers that have availability. I know most of them are working on, you know, they can only accommodate half the number of test takers they could in the past, so seats are filling up quickly. So if you do want to take it when you're at home during November and December, I would say try to find a seat now before all those seats get filled. Yeah.
This is all part of the whole timeline that we're going to wind up talking about as well. So you usually want to think about setting this up a few months in advance, but especially right now, if you're thinking, hey, I want to take this when the semester's over, so is everybody else at every other college. So reserving a seat right now is going to be especially helpful, if that's something that you're inclined to do, because that's your timeline right now. Any other questions for Kim? Well, if not,
If you have questions later on, you can always email either me or Dr. Fryer, and we will happily pass that along to her. I have her contact information, so if you think of something later on, feel free to let us know.
All right. Thank you for having me.
thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kim. Good to see you. Have a good semester.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, all right, everyone. Now it's time to talk about everything else besides the GRE. This is, of course, one important piece of your application, but there's so much else for your application that we need to go over here. Okay, just to warn you, this Dr. Stillwell and I are going to throw an astonishing amount of information at you right now. I like to think about this as an absolute fire hose of grad school and GRE kind of information. Please remember that this is a lot, it is overwhelming, and this is absolutely not the last time that we are going to talk to you about these things, all right? If you are in your senior year and you're thinking about going to graduate school as soon as you graduate, okay, you're on a really compressed timeline right now. But for anyone else, if you're thinking about taking a year off, at least a year, or if you're in your junior year, you have plenty of time to start building this schedule. Dr. Stillwell, is there anywhere in particular that you would like to start?
Can I get a thumbs up for those of you who are seniors?
Oh, yeah, normally we do this by
Do we
show
have
of
any
hands.
seniors? I see 1, 2 seniors. Okay, put them down. Can I get a thumbs up for juniors? 1. Ray, are you a senior or a junior? Joe's a junior.
Sorry, I'm a senior. I
You're a senior.
accidentally
Okay.
clicked it again.
Okay, wait. So Cheyenne's a senior. So we've got a couple of seniors, a couple of juniors. Anybody second year, first year? Grace, Destiny. Okay, so for you guys, this is going to be sort of thinking down the road. You don't have to worry about this now. Please don't stress about it. For the juniors, this is what you're going to be wanting to think about for next fall. So it's good that you're here. For the seniors, it depends on whether you're planning to be here planning to head to grad school next fall, or like Dr. Fire said, if you're planning to maybe take some time, work for a bit. Can I get a thumbs up if anyone is thinking about a doctoral program? PhD, PsyD, we'll talk about that. We got 1 potential doctoral program, okay. And Victoria and Joe, okay. Victoria, did you say you were a senior? I don't remember.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, okay. So timelines for seniors for PhD programs, end of November.
As in, that's when applications are going to be due. Usually end of November, maybe early December, but it's a lot sooner than anything else.
So Victoria, for you, your timeline is pretty short. And so you're going to want to, if you're looking to go this next fall, things are going to be accelerated for you.
Now, before we start talking about timelines and things, let me first mention the whole idea of grad school to begin with, right? The whole point of this is to figure out how much training that you need, if any more, to be able to do the kind of thing that you want to do when you graduate. If you would like to be, if you'd like to be a counselor, be someone who's working with people in a counseling setting, in a home kind of setting, potentially you could get away with, having a master's in mental health counseling, or a master's in social work, or something like this. If you eventually want to be a professor and you really, really thoroughly enjoy research, then yeah, maybe a PhD is in your future. I always like to tell people, don't just think about getting more education for the sake of getting education. Think about, what do you need to get in order to have the kind of career that you want? As Dr. Stillwell always famously says, what do you need to do to make sure that Monday morning doesn't suck? I totally just stole your line. Sorry about that.
No, but it's really true. You want to think about, what is the setting? Where do you want to spend your days? And then sort of work from there. How do we get you to that particular setting? What is sort of educational path is it going to take for you there?
Right.
And that's something that we can certainly do one-on-one with you. It's kind of hard to do in a group. So we're happy to do that, in individual appointments or something like that. So like if you want to work as an independent counselor, like Dr. Fryer said, a master's in social work, a master's in mental health counseling, or perhaps clinical psychology would be really probably the best path. That's what insurance companies tend to like, is these kind of degrees. If you want to call yourself a psychologist and you want to do diagnosing and maybe even a little bit of prescribing medication, then maybe a PhD is the way to go. So the APA website, I'm going to put it up, has all, this is the American Psychological Association, has all kinds of resources for helping you to figure that path out. What is it that you would need to do in order to get there? The same thing for social work. I think this is right. This is the right one. National Association of Social Workers. I believe that's the right link. And there are also mental health counseling websites as well that can help you get to that, sort of come to that realization, that decision. So it's kind of something that we can help you figure it out, but we can't make that decision for you. That's kind of up to you.
Let me real quick.
I'm throwing it back to you.
Cool. Let me real quick take a second and distinguish between master's programs, PhD programs, and PsyD programs. Three of the most popular kind of things that we see. Master's programs tend to be a couple of years, maybe, somewhere between 1.5 to 3 years, depending on the program. That's also going to be tuition. So one of the reasons that we always talk about, let's make sure to figure out what you want to do, is because this is probably going to cost a bunch more money here. Master's programs tend to be a lot more like continuation of undergrad in some ways. Plus, you'll also, again, if you're thinking clinical counseling, you'll also throw in some serious internship hours as well. So so of course you're doing what we're talking about. PhD programs, these are heavily based in research. If you took research methods and never ever want to think about this again, it's likely that a PhD program is not what you'd want to do. And also, if you graduate and you don't already have some independent research experience, no offense, but you're probably at that point not going to get into a PhD program. PhD programs are a lot less focused on class-based work and a lot more focused on research. Now, of course, if you're a clinical PhD, you're also doing a lot of work as a clinician, a lot of work, being supervised by somebody else. So you have both of those things going on. I say this kind of stuff not to tell people, oh, here's what you can't do, but especially if you're, a junior or a sophomore, if you're really super set on getting a PhD, here's something else that you need to think about before you graduate, because trust me, this is super important. And again, it's not just, oh, I have research experience, therefore I can get into this. It's, I really thoroughly enjoy research and I want to spend the next 6 years, if not my life, doing this kind of stuff, right? If you hate research and you go and you actually get into a PhD program, yeah, you might be able to get into it, but you're going to be miserable the entire time, right? And we're looking out for you. That's what we're saying here. There are going to be a lot of jobs that might require a PhD, but again, if you're interested in being a counselor, independent psychologist, like Dr. Stillwell said, there are several positions that are available to people with masters, and I always want to encourage people to look at those things. And by the way, I'm probably going to just start yapping, so if anyone has questions, raise your hand, feel free to break in, please, please, please. I get tired of hearing myself talk too. A PsyD is, you get to call yourself doctor, but PsyD programs are not focused on doing research as much. They're more about consuming research, being able to understand research, not doing it in the same way. So not having a big thesis that you wind up producing before you graduate. But PhD programs, typically you get paid to go there. Your tuition is covered and you get a stipend. Now, granted, the stipend that you get is incredibly small. It's probably at most going to be, I don't know, maybe they're probably at like $20,000 these days. So it's not laughable. You're not spending money. PsyD programs can cost you upwards of 6 figures a year to get into one of those. That sounds like a lot, and it is. But If you want to have that kind of career where you can be called doctor, PhD versus PsyD is another alternate route. Now, it also depends on what you want to do when that's done. Your professors are all PhDs. Your professors here are not really PsyDs. That's, again, practice, not about research in the same kind of way. Joe, great question. What's the best way to gain research experience as an undergraduate? Talk to your faculty, see who's doing research, and see whose interests line up with the things that you're doing. In our department, we have, again, faculty who would be looking for students as research assistants. We also have our departmental honors program, which is, in your last year here, you wind up, developing an independent research project with a faculty mentor. And then again, by the end of the year, you've done your own research project. There's also, college-wide things like the Presidential Scholars Program, which is really in some ways the same as our departmental honors program. So in this case, the best thing is really to be talking with faculty members, and you don't want to you can't just do research on your own in the same way. You need to be connected with somebody who's a primary investigator and doing the work with them. Dr. Stillwell, did I leave anything out of those three? Anything you want to add?
I was going to say a good professor to ask about doing research is someone that you've had a class with, someone you've taken a class with and that you've done well in the class. It's a whole lot easier because you sort of understand what their area is, and if that's something that's interesting to you, as opposed to just walking randomly into somebody's office or the Zoom equivalent of that. So if you've taken a class with a professor and you really liked it and you think, wow, this is something I could really do, just send an email. Say, hey, I took your class, I really liked it. Do you have anything open at the moment? Could I get some research experience with you?
One more small plug. It's as easy as that. One more small plug, our own departmental honors program. Usually what you do is the spring of your second to last year, you take our honors seminar where you learn more about the research process, develop a proposal, and then in your last year on campus, you're working with a faculty mentor on that process. So if you are interested in research, feel free to look into that honors seminar that we teach in the spring. I'm teaching it. I'm the guy who's in charge of this apparently. So if you ever have any questions, you know who I am now. Please feel free to reach out to me, all right? Okay. Master's versus PhD versus PsyD.
Before we go any further, does anyone else have questions? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I have no more questions.
I was going to say, does anyone else have questions before we continue? I don't know if I'm...
No, I don't see anything else. Okay. So I'm going to start from the beginning, right? How do you find a program? So let's say you've decided, all right, what I need based on the career that I want is, let's just say, a master's in mental health counseling. How do you know where to look to be able to find that stuff? Several places. First of all, places like society websites, apa.org, the link that Dr. Stillwell put in here, will have a listing of graduate programs around the country. We also have access to a lot of other information. Here are all of the mental health counseling programs in the United States. And thankfully, we can also sort of break those down. Oh, look, Dr. Stillwell has the book in her hand. So this book that she has is delightful because it breaks it down by, here's where all the Masters in Mental Health Counseling programs are, but also here's what this particular mental health counseling program says is important. If there is a required minimum GPA, if there is, on average, here's how many people applied and here's how many people accepted. Here were their typical GRE scores, etc. So you can get a pretty good sense of, is this place going to be a good fit for me? This stuff is all also online. I believe, I'm not sure if we have access to it at the moment, or we need to work that out still, but we have books like that in the department office. I know, unfortunately, not everyone is on campus. Getting in a step-by-step admission to graduate something in psychology. Okay, cool. Same kind of thing. Also, the whole process of finding grad programs, it's going to be fairly tedious. You're going to be doing a lot of searching online, a lot of looking at programs online. Please, from here on out, whenever you start, One of the most important things is keeping meticulous organization of everything. People who have gone through this process before and who have been really successful have everything built into wonderful Excel spreadsheets, right? Here's the school, here's the link, here's the contact person, here's the application date, here's what they require, the GRE scores, the addresses, etc. Keep track of everything. If you're working on this during the semester, I always like to tell people that this is going to be almost the equivalent of another 3-credit course for you to have to think about, right? And at first, especially in this exploratory process, it's just going to be a lot of looking. There's no single right answer for, you want a mental health counseling degree? That's your program. It's all based on what you want, where you want to be, how much a program is, what the requirements are, what you bring to the table, etc. So I know I'm being really vague about that, but it's a really messy process to get started. Now, with that, one of the things that we can do is Dr. Stillwell has wonderful lists of people, records of all of our graduates and where they've gone to. So if you say something like, hey, I'm really interested in a master's in social work, we have a lot of places where SUNY Potsdam graduates have gotten in and being successful, and you can use those as starting points in your own search. Right? Anything I'm missing on this so far?
No, I think you're okay. I was just, my records that I have for students who have gone on to graduate schools, it goes back to the 90s. I mean, I have to update for this past year. I just haven't had a chance.
A lot of our students
But
don't go back
I've
to the
been
90s.
keeping pretty good notes. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I don't have a lot. I don't have everybody, but I have a pretty good record.
And one other thing that we are really able to do and do often is put people in touch with somebody who has been accepted into that program and who has gone through it. So we can, of course, tell you what this looks like from the outside, but hey, this person got through that program 2 years ago. Here's their email address. And they're usually really super helpful and happy to talk to our students to let you know what's really important here. Okay.
I was hoping that we would have some alumni today, but apparently they're not showing up, so they're busy, I guess.
Yeah, they're all busy in grad school, apparently. Does anyone have any questions about how to find a program? Anything else I haven't said? And again, remember, fire hose of information. This is the first time we're talking here. Okay, one thing that a lot of people will do is think, hey, I'm from Buffalo. I'm going to go to the University of Buffalo. Why do I want to go there? Because it's right next to my home and I can live with my parents and I can save some money. You might be thinking that, right? And that might be the reason why you want to go there. Don't tell them that. Right? Again, things like where you want to spend the next 2 or 3 years, of course, that's going to matter in terms of which grad programs you pick out, and that's great. But just keep in mind, that's not the reason, according to you, that you're applying there to begin with. All right, so let's say that you find programs. How many programs should you apply to? There's no magic number. If money is not an issue, and that's laughable because, of course, all these applications are going to cost money. What do they normally go for? I don't know, 50, 60 bucks a pop sometimes? Cool. And again, if you're a member of C-STEP, you can have some of these things paid for. They will contribute to application fees. C-STEP, by the way, in case you've never heard of this, first generation, generally speaking, not the highest income, maybe certain underrepresented minority ethnicities. If you're at all curious if you would apply for this program, let me know. I love sending people over to Tammy Snell and C-STEP to see if you can be a part of that program. I love them, trust me. How many programs should you apply to? If you apply to one, then you're pretty much putting your eggs in that basket. If you get into this program, that's great. If you don't, you're taking a year off. Grad school applications go on a yearly cycle, almost exclusively on a yearly cycle, as in you apply at one point in the year, and that's to start in August or September of whatever year you're applying for. There's usually not summer start or spring start. So that's why we need to talk about this. You gear up for it because it's only usually once a year when the application cycle happens. We normally recommend, maybe if you want to, 3 to 6 programs, maybe a program or two, like, yes, these are good fits for me. Maybe 1 or 2 where it's more of a reach. I'm not sure if I can get in, but boy, if I did, I'd really love that. And then maybe 1 or 2 where I'm pretty confident that I can get into these programs here. Now, with all that said, don't bother applying to a program unless you would go to it, right? Do not waste time applying to something if you just wouldn't go no matter what anyways, right? It's just inherently useless. But also, don't go because of location. Dr. Stillwell has some horror stories about how this kind of stuff has happened.
Yes, one of our students always wanted to live in Hawaii. She wanted to live in Hawaii. Oh, it was the best thing. And so she applied for a graduate program at Argosy, which in Hawaii, and the pictures were beautiful and beaches and everything. And we tried to tell her that maybe are you really seeing what the program is? And no, I want to go to Hawaii. And she went and she was there for a semester and she spent a ton of money. It was on the second floor of an office building. She wasn't learning anything that she hadn't already learned as an undergraduate. She spent a ton of money getting there. She spent a ton of money on tuition and living there. She came back and basically had wasted all of that money and all of that time and didn't get anything out of it. And this worries us for a lot of these for-profit schools like Argosy, like University of Phoenix. Some of the online programs are somewhat questionable. Some of them are fine, as long as an online program is connected to an actual physical university, like Arizona State has some really good online programs. The MSW at Buffalo is great. It's an online program, but it's great. Southern New Hampshire University, I think, is pretty good from what I've heard. It's okay. Or is it University of New England? I can't remember.
So in general, what
excellent.
yeah, I just dug that up. What you want, if you're going for psychology in some way, you want a program that is accredited by APA. Every program will have to tell you about their accreditation status. What this means is that APA, our big governing board, has reviewed that program and said, yes, this meets the standards that we would need you to meet in order to be a qualified practicing member of our community. If you go to a program that is not APA accredited, let's pretend again, you manage to get into a PhD program and it's for clinical psychology, and that's great. And then you go to get your internship hours and nobody is willing to take you on because you didn't go to an APA accredited program. So here you spend a whole bunch of money and time getting a degree, but then you can't actually practice because you can't follow through with those supervision hours here. It's kind of weird talking about potentially lower quality online programs, seeing as how, the world is on fire and everything's online right now. But like Dr. Stillwell said, for the most part, think about programs that are actually connected to brick and mortar institutions. That's the general rule. There might be exceptions, right? But please, this is one of those things that if you're thinking, hey, I really need to go online, is this program good? Please run it by someone, including us, and we will help you figure out if that's a decent program here, all right? This APA accreditation thing, I can't stress this kind of stuff enough, especially because the non-APA accredited programs, even if you go through it, you go to apply for a job, and you're not really taken seriously, right?
There's it's a clinical psych master's program at Columbia Teachers College.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this one before. And one of our alums got into this program. She was super excited. She's going to get her master's in clinical. It's from Columbia, New York City. This is really exciting. And I looked at it and I couldn't find where it was accredited. And I tried to tell her, I said, is this accredited? She goes, no, it's great. It's great. It's great. It's not accredited. And it somewhere buried on the website, I actually went and looked it up a couple of years ago, buried in the website, it says this is not an accredited program. It does not prepare you to become a clinician. I guess you just take it for funsies. And it was a lot of money and a lot of time. and she just got her master's in clinical, and she can't do anything with it because it does not lead to licensure. And so she's, not using her degree at all. And I put in the chat CACREP, that is an accreditation body for counseling master's programs that are not psychology. That doesn't mean they're bad. Mental health counseling is a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary program, and those are typically not housed in psychology departments, but they are accredited by this governing body, CACREP. So, and again, for social work, the National Association of Social Workers, that's who's going to accredit those social work programs. Like Binghamton and Buffalo both have really great accredited, Brockport. And I can't remember if Plattsburgh has one. I keep forgetting.
I feel like they do.
But school counseling programs would oftentimes be CACREP.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I know we oftentimes say, we emphasize SUNY programs like Buffalo and Binghamton. And that's because for a lot of people, if you're a New York State resident, the tuition is going to be cheaper because you are in state. Now, let's say, for example, that you're really super psyched to go to this place that's in Florida. What we've had other people do before is move to Florida, wait a couple of years, establish residency, and then you get the cheaper in-state tuition. We alluded to this beforehand, but I want to make this especially clear. Taking time off between undergraduate and graduate there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people feel a lot of pressure, like you just have to keep on plowing through. I've had people say, oh, if I take some time off, I'm not going to want to go back. And then I say, well, then why do you want to go in the first place, right? If you're scared of not going back, is this something that you really want to do? Honestly, I've advised people to take some time off. If your undergrad GPA isn't necessarily the best, take some time off, right? Get some actual experience in that field. And that kind of counters the lower GPA. Yeah, you only had, I don't know, a 2.6 as an undergrad, but now you have 3 years of working in this field and you're a much stronger applicant. So please keep in the back of your mind, there is nothing wrong with taking time off, please, right? A lot of people that have. I mean, granted, my path was fairly different, but I totally took like 5 years off between undergraduate and grad school, right? This kind of stuff happens all the time, trust me. For those of you who are connected to the our Psych Club Facebook page, maybe a month ago, I posted some interviews, some stuff through one of my big organizations that said, we just want to make sure that people know that this is common. This is most of the time what people do. So keep that in mind, right? Okay, you found some places. You have actually visited them, if at all possible, to know that it's actually a place you want to be, right? Of course, maybe you can't go visit in Hawaii, but you've checked this out. You know where you want to go. What do you do next? Stopping for questions because I just can't shut up. Anybody have any questions about anything just yet? Forgive me, I didn't ask yet. Okay, what do you need as part of your application packet? Every school is going to require a transcript. So you'll have those sent from the registrar directly to whatever other school's admissions office you're applying to. Some schools are going to require the GRE. Not every school. Now, we have had people not apply to certain schools before because they were afraid of taking the GRE. This is really limiting yourself. So we would strongly advise to not do that if you can all avoid that, right? Your GRE scores do not need to be perfect. You are not going to get into graduate school solely on the base of your GRE. Usually, what's going to happen is we like to think about your GPA and your GRE as gatekeepers. Somebody looks at your admissions folder and they open the first page, right? Here's your info sheet. Here's where you went to school. Here's your degree. Here's your GPA. Here's your GRE scores. Okay, is this enough to now make me want to turn to the second page and read everything else in your application? So, of course, if you've got an astonishingly low GPA or terrible GRE scores, yeah, maybe you need to retake those and bump those up. GRE scores are on a weird number scale right now. They go from 130 to 170, where 150 is kind of the mid-range. Ideally, you want to be at least as close to 150 if you can as possible, be at least average. But again, one of the things that you find, especially if you look at those books that Dr. Stillwell had before, what's the average GRE score for people who apply? What's the average GRE score for people who get accepted? Okay. Every school is going to require, like I said, your transcript, maybe GRE. Oh, and when I say GRE, I mean the general GRE, right? This is what Kim was talking about. There is also a psychology GRE. I love Dr. Stillwell's description of this. It's like a comprehensive final for intro to psychology on steroids. If your program says you do not need to take this, do not take this. It is incredibly rare that you will see a program, maybe some PhD programs, but not even all, right? I never took the psych GRE. So don't worry about the psych GRE nearly as much. If you have to study for the psych GRE, really, just get yourself an intro to psych textbook and review that. I mean, that's not really fair because a psych GRE is going to have questions on there from courses that we don't even offer, right? Like there'd be questions on industrial organizational psych and neuroscience and all sorts of stuff across psych. So really, don't do the psych GRE unless you absolutely have to. Everybody clear on that? Cool, thanks. Transcripts, GREs, personal statements. This, gotta let the dog out, love it. I guess I'm in charge myself. Every program is going to ask you for some semblance of a personal statement. What this is going to be about is going to be sort of dependent on what that school wants. So when you're going through all of these programs and taking notes of, when the due dates are, et cetera, copy the instructions for the personal statement. Maybe it's called a personal statement, a statement of goals, a statement of career plans, of values and interests. It's all the same thing, really. Basically, what they want to know is, why do you want to apply here? What's the point of all of this? There is no one set way to write this. And like I said, it's going to be entirely dependent on what they ask for. I had one student one year, she was applying to a half dozen programs. One school said, we want a statement of goals that is no more than 750 words. Another said, we want a statement that's really a psychobiography that's a minimum of 6,000 words. Again, you got to write multiple versions of this. Whenever I talk to people about the personal statement, I usually break this down into 3 different areas. Again, this is so rough, it's not outlineable, but it's kind of a rough outline. Number 1, again, let's pretend you want to go to a mental health counseling place. Why do you want to be a mental health counselor? Where did this come from? When you write that section, do not talk in depth about your own issues. If the person who's reading your statement would be uncomfortable with the level of detail that you're giving, dial it down, right? Yes, too much information is awkward. Now, that's not to say, hey, I've been dealing with this issue my whole life. I'd like to be able to do X, Y, and Z because of this. That's potentially okay. But just keep in mind, right? You don't have to lay bare your own trauma for this. You could say, I've always found this interesting. Here's a class that I took where this was super relevant. Like, this is the kind of career that I want to have. So again, not too much information about yourself. Section 1, why you want to be a counselor. Section 2, why you're going to be a good counselor. Believe it or not, grad programs are only going to accept you if they think that you are going to be able to complete the program. If they have a bunch of people drop out, that makes them look bad. So they only want to bring people in where they're pretty confident you're going to make it through this, right? So here's where you talk about things like the courses that you've taken, the internship experiences that you undoubtedly had before you graduated. And I know that if you're my advisee or Dr. Stillwell's advisee, you're getting some sort of applied learning experience before you graduate. It's not a requirement for a lot of grad programs, but it is a requirement, right?
And it will be a requirement for incoming first-year students.
If you want to go into a counseling program, yeah, Do some counseling before you graduate. Set up an internship. Be a peer counselor on campus. Honestly, more than one of these is better. If you're going for a more research-focused degree, you have done independent research, right? You've been a teaching assistant, you've been a tutor, you've been all this other stuff. You have done something, and this is why you're going to be good at this. This is going to be the majority of your personal statement, right? So, of course, for all of you sophomores and juniors here right now, if you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, I got to get myself an internship or some research experience before I graduate. That's why we're doing this, all right? The last section of this is going to be why you need to go to that particular program in order to be such a good counselor. The first sections you can hopefully keep for any program that you apply to. But that third section, you're going to change that, of course. Now, I mean, of course, make sure you send the right school the right letter. But when you say that, right, here's the focus of your program. I really love how you have a particular focus on X, Y, and Z. You have these particular internship sites that I really want to work at. These professors that are doing research, these courses that I want to take. Not only do you know for yourself, yeah, this is a good program for me because I know that it's a good fit, but you also get to convince them, I did my research on your place. I'm not just sending applications to literally anywhere in the world. I want to go to your school here. When you write this personal statement, I want you to think of big glowing letters, the word fit. I am going to be a good fit for your program. If you have a counseling program and they're really super keen on, CBT, and you're just huge into, psychodynamic stuff, you didn't do your research, and they're going to notice that, and your application is not going to go anywhere. Like Dr. Stillwell always says, and I'm stealing all of your, you know how many times we've done this? I know what you're going to say. They take your $50 application fee, and then they go have pizza, and that's as far as your application goes, all right?
Yep, bye-bye money.
Okay.
Seriously, ask us if you're not sure. If you're looking at a program and you're not entirely sure, send us a link. We'll be happy to cruise through it and see if it's a good match for you.
Your personal statement. I will, so we are recording this. I'm going to put this up.
Yes, you can watch. Yes.
Yes, this will be watched later. Yes, right on. Oh, geez, sorry about that. Oh, it's already 6. All right, cool. Your personal,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, whatever. Your personal statement is going to be insanely difficult to write, and no offense, but it's probably going to suck at first. It's really going to be terrible. Forgive me. Everybody's is. At least everybody feels that this is one of the most challenging things that they have to write, partially because you're writing about yourself and why you are so awesome. You got to blow up yourself here, right? Please promise me now that you will have somebody read this over, not just a good friend of yours, but ideally faculty members who are writing you letters of recommendation. Have them review this. When I write letters of recommendation for people, Dr. Stillwell and I, we have this little game. We go through sometimes 2-3 drafts of a personal statement with somebody before we let them send it out. The whole point of this, trust me, is we want to put you in the best possible position so that you can get into this program. Whole point of the application, the best representation of yourself. And we want to help shape that statement to reflect the best of what you are. Okay. Any questions on this personal statement just yet?
It's always weird writing about yourself and saying, this is why I'm great and this is why you should, accept me into your program. And it's going to be weird. Just accept that it will, you're going to struggle a little bit. Whatever it is that puts you in a good mood, try to be in a good mood when you're writing this. If you're in a bad, crummy, depressed mood, it's not going to work. So if watching a funny video or something puts you in that right frame of mind, that's what to do. And sort of accept that you're not going to get it right on the first try, and that's okay, and we'll help you with that.
All of the stuff that I just said, I kind of have written up in a nice little framework that I send to people sometimes. So if you ever want to hear that again, let me know. I'll email you the text that I have written out. look online for personal statements, right? Don't just trust us. What have other people put out there, especially people who have gotten into clinical programs? You know, people who have gotten into something, ask them for theirs, like model yours after their stuff. It's not cheating, right? It's your own, but get the model here. Cool. All right. So you've written your
There's
personal
nothing
statement.
about I want to love the people.
Oh, how did I forget that? One thing that you never want to say, especially if you're going for clinical or counseling, don't say you want to help people. It's the most overused cliche, and like, we can find other ways to suggest this, right? But I want to help everybody. Stop. Like, you sound like everybody else. We'll differentiate you in some other meaningful way here. Okay, so you've written your personal statement. As you can tell, Dr. Stillwell and I, apparently especially I, can talk about this forever. Try to keep things concise. You also need letters of recommendation. You are going to need a minimum of 2 letters, maybe 3, depending on the program, usually not more than that. The letters of recommendation need to be professional letters of recommendation. So no asking friends or family members or anything like that. It makes you, unfortunately, look like a joke if you do that kind of stuff. So you're looking
Pizza
for
money.
pizza money again, yeah. You're looking at faculty members, internship supervisors, or in other rare cases, someone else who has seen you operate in an environment that's going to be similar to what you eventually want to do in that program. So, you know, if you want to go into, you know, child psychopathology and you worked at a summer camp for a bunch of years for children with special needs, yeah, in that case, your camp director has seen you do that. That's legitimate. Normally, you know, people who are applying for jobs, you would list bosses, other people. No offense, but if you've been working at Walgreens for 4 years, your manager is not going to be someone you should ask for a letter of recommendation for graduate school. You want people that are directly connected to the academic stuff. Arlene?
Unless you decide that you want to go for human resources and you're an assistant manager and you've supervised people at Walgreens and you're going to like in what we call an IO program, which would industrial organizational. Maybe then you might want to have your boss at Walgreens who supervised you in that way. But it's pretty uncommon to have someone like that as a letter writer for you.
That's that whole special circumstance thing that rarely happens, but absolutely, right? Now, how do you ask for these things? So you want someone to write you letters who knows you incredibly well and who's going to write a glowing letter of recommendation for you. You do not want a meh letter, right? Now, again, no offense, but let's just say that, you know, one of us has had you in class and you took one class with us and I don't know, you got a 2 point something and you didn't say anything really, but you took the exams and you were there most of the time. When it comes to writing a letter, it's not that we don't want you to get into graduate school, but think about what we could really say, right? Not a whole lot. We're not going to lie. Your faculty and your supervisors will not just say you're the greatest thing since sliced bread if they don't know this, right? We have reputations. We write letters for people all the time. So again, especially if you're a sophomore or a junior, keep in mind, right? Who would I ask for a letter of recommendation? And what do I need to do between now and then to get a really, really good one? Certain faculty or certain people could talk about different things. So let's say, for example, you take a class like, oh, I don't know, Dr. Stillwell's History of Psychology. Small group class, you are doing a lot of speaking, you are doing a lot of writing. She is going to know that you are good at these things and can write very confidently about how good you are at that stuff. So taking classes where you get to say things like, hey, this person can write about my speaking ability. This person can write about, I'm not suggesting that you need to be somebody who now just shows up to every single office hours for a faculty and sends them links all the time for them to read. You don't have to do this, but again, just make sure that you are giving your letter writers something positive to write about. If you ever have a faculty member who says that they are not going to write you a letter of recommendation, you know what you should say to them? Dr. Stillwell?
Thank you. Because if I can't write a good letter for you, I'm not going to write one. and you don't want me to write one, right? Say thank you, and then find someone else who knows you well enough to write a letter. If you've only had me in one class, like I said, and you haven't, or like Dr. Fryer said, and we haven't interacted, it was a class where there's not a whole lot of writing or something like that. I'm turning my video off because I'm unstable. Maybe I'm not the best. He's over there laughing that I'm on
I think you're a very stable genius, dear.
Stop it. Sorry. Small house, and he needs to go elsewhere. Find someone who you've written for, or maybe you have been a TA in their class or something like that. That faculty member is going to have more good things to say that are useful in a letter. And that's, that's how that works.
All right. So keep this in mind. Now, like I said, you're going to need a minimum of 2, maybe 3. Even if you're not applying just yet, it is completely legit to email some faculty, say at the beginning of an academic year, and then say, hey, I'm going to apply for grad school. The applications are going to be due in like 4 months. Would you be able to write a letter for me? Again, it's months in advance, but at least you get this sort of locked down, and that's completely okay. Sort of get the commitments early on, right? You need to give people time before they can write a letter. Ideally, at least a couple of weeks. One thing that I've given out before, and let me just sort of see if I can kind of share my screen real quick. Yeah, check this out. I'm going to show you something that I send the people that I'm going to write a letter for, right? Can you see this little reference info sheet that I put up here? Cool.
Yep, we got it.
Basically, and again, I always post this online in the SUNY Potsdam Psych Club Facebook group, so everybody can have access to this. Basically, here's all the information I need. Here's the school name, here's the deadline, here's what you did with me, here's other courses, when did I first meet you, other stuff. You are the advocate. You're the best advocate for your own letters. So if you want me to say, hey, I need you to write about my writing ability, you're the one who knows, tell me, right? I want to know what I can do to help you out with your letters. We also include things like deadlines on here. And I always tell students, if you need to nudge us a little bit, you're not offending us. It's okay. We're going to be writing every cycle a large number of letters for people. And I want to make sure I get those in on time. So if it's a week before the deadline and you haven't gotten that confirmation email from your school yet that I submitted my letter, I would like a reminder. And everyone else will probably want that as well. Trust me, you're not going to bug us. It's just, hey, gentle reminder, it's okay. All right. But like I said, at least a couple of weeks in advance so we can get all these things together. Writing a good letter actually does take some time. So we want to be able to put that together for you and have enough time to do so here. Okay. Any other questions on letters of recommendation? There's one last thing to talk about. You need a CV, a curriculum vitae. This is the academic version of your resume. You could submit a resume with your grad school applications, but again, remember the whole point of this, put you in the best possible light. Your CV is different from your resume because it's only focused on the academic stuff, the stuff that's going to be directly related to graduate school. So your coursework, your internships, again. Now I know, of course, you wrote about some of those things in your personal statement, but remember, if it's super important, put it in more than one location. Beat the committee over the head with this. I need you to know how awesome I was at this thing. Like I said before, I gave sort of a rough outline for how to put together a personal statement. I do also have a template that I give people for putting together a CV. And this is something that I share with people all the time. I wonder if you can can you see this as well?
Yeah, we can see it.
Sweet, okay, cool. This is another bigger deal, and usually what Dr. Stillwell and I do is every semester we have a CV workshop where we have people sort of on their own computers, and I give them all this template, and then they work on it. We actually help them put it together at that particular moment. So again, if you just look at stuff like this, you don't have stuff like work experience unless it's directly related to what you want to do in graduate school. So again, I've got these things posted up online. You put the reference info on here. So again, even if you only need 2 letters of recommendation, yeah, it might be helpful to get 3 referees just in case, so you can put a third one on your CV as well. I'm going to gloss over this for right now, only because we are going to talk a lot more about how this goes later on in the semester. And so this one's a little bit easier to put together than that personal statement. There is only one other thing left that I want to mention here, and that is the timeline, because we really didn't explicitly talk about this beforehand. Anything else I'm skipping? Anybody else have any questions at the moment so far? Okay, let's pretend that you want to go to grad school directly after your senior year. What that means, you got to take the GRE, let's say that. We always recommend to people, do some studying probably the summer before your senior year. Spend that summer as much as you can practicing. Remember how Kim was saying earlier, right? Get yourself some tests, get yourself some books, and do some practicing. Even if you don't take the somewhat expensive Clarkson GRE prep course, buy yourself some books. Right? Get them from C-STEP if you can, if you're a member of that, and practice, practice, practice. This is the best predictor of success on the GRE, right? Especially practicing online as you're going to do that GRE for real. That lets you potentially take your GRE at the end of the summer or early in the fall semester. If you don't like your scores, that gives you enough time to maybe take it a second time during the semester, if not, at the end of the semester. If you're applying for PhD programs, those deadlines are all going to be something like November 15th, maybe early December. If you're applying for master's programs, those could be anytime. Those could be potentially, mid-January. We've had people still applying to grad programs in April and May. It depends entirely on the program. So that's going to be more in the spring semester. And again, this is all for then starting the following fall. So if you're going for PhD programs, let's say you're going for one next year, you'd be applying November 2020 to be able to start in fall 2021. So that's why usually spring of your third year, you're figuring out what you want to do, what programs you want to apply to. Over the summer, maybe it's practicing the GRE, getting your CV together, getting your personal statement ready. And then in the fall, hopefully, if everything goes well, it's all of that last minute minutia. Keeping, like, when have you submitted this? Keeping track of everybody who needs to submit something for you, getting all of your transcripts together. Like we said before, this is a lot of organization. And think about it as another 3-credit class during the semester if you're doing this during a semester, right? I heard one person once say that the grad school application process is in some ways kind of like a gatekeeper to grad school. Like, you got to go through this hurdle before, and if you can do that, then you're likely to be successful in grad school to begin with. I know that's kind of daunting, but it's kind of a reality.
Grad school is all about being organized, being on task, being independent, not having to have someone push you and poke you, that you're on top of everything yourself. It's absolutely, that's what it takes to be successful. So in some ways, yes, being able to manage that process of applying to graduate school fairly successfully indicates to them that you will manage the actual process of being a graduate student fairly successfully as well.
For those of you who have gone through personality with me, remember, it's not intelligence, it's conscientiousness. This is what's going to predict success here, right? Does anybody have any other last minute comments or questions? I'm running out of things to say, and I'm thinking about wrapping it up soon. I don't know about you, Dr. Stillwell.
I think we've pretty much covered it, and the fact that it's been recorded, I think, is going to be good, because people can then go back through, watch the video, and then email either one of us. I'll put my email in the chat, but you know where to find me.
Right. And like we said at the start of this is a fire hose. We just absolutely dumped an hour and 15 minutes of information on you, and I don't think we stopped talking the entire time, right? This is the first time that we are talking to you. Please do not think that you need to know all of the answers by the end of this. You absolutely do not. When I work with students on this, if they're applying to grad school and I'm really helping them through this, I might be talking with them every week or two, just checking in on developments and how things are going, all right? So pick your people. And one other thing I tell people, if I'm writing you a letter of recommendation, I'm also volunteering to go over your personal statement, go over your CV, and give you advice through this entire process, right? Even if I'm not writing a letter of recommendation. I mean, I'll speak for the two of us here, and I'm saying the two of us because my picture, you're right next to me here. We're gonna do the same thing, right? This process is really frustrating. You will get incredibly discouraged. This is normal, right? There's nothing wrong with you if you are incredibly anxious or worried or just genuinely disgusted by how all of this is going. Just please keep in mind when you have questions, because you will have questions, we are here to help you figure all these things out.
And it's normal to feel this way. The students who have come before you have felt this way. If you feel like there's someone, if there's a program you've identified and you're really interested in it and you want to talk to someone who's there, let one of us know. We have a list of who's currently in these programs. I'd be happy to get you connected up. I am in contact with our alumni via social media, so I'm happy to do that. And they're willing to talk to you as well. And my phone's ringing.
Anybody have any last minute questions or comments here? All right, when you do, you know where to find us. Thank you all for being here. I hope this was at least somewhat useful in the moment. Let us know what we can do for you next. All right?
Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great night, everyone. We love you all.
Have a good
Take care.
night.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.